Hi, this is Lauren in Ohio, and you're listening to Two Broads Talking Politics.
Hey everybody, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. We are still basking in the glow of a new Democratic House. I'm here with my co-host Sophie. Hey Sophie.
Hey Kelly, basking is right.
And we are joined today by Scott Dworkin, who is the co-founder and lead investigator for the Democratic Coalition and is host of his own podcast, The Dworkin Report. Hi Scott.
Hey Kelly, Sophie, how are you?
Great. Better now than last week, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So, Scott, maybe you could start us off with just some background about, what you've done up till now and what the Democratic Coalition is.
Sure. I went to NC State and I got degrees in sociology and then also political science. Did some internships that turned into jobs during college and then went on the road for campaigns starting in 2005. And then in 2007, I started working in D.C. and a guy named Barack Obama decided to run for president, and that worked out for him. In 2009, I was the deputy director of the NARGO committee. I was lucky enough to be the liaison and advance person handling his friends that were on the campaign trail. So people like Quincy Lucas and Lilly Ledbetter, leaders in the movement, people who were in commercials, things like that. And I was able to finagle a way that we could dance on stage with him after his first dance with Michelle. So that was a fun little ditty. Only problem was I was very, very ill. I had gotten food poisoning after the campaign. I ran a marathon 2 days before the election, which was not the smartest thing in the world. But I did it with food poisoning, which is not very smart at all. Anyway, so there's an iconic picture of him with Denzel, and then I'm right in the middle of it with a side view while I'm on steroids, so my face is all puffy. So at least my picture's in Barack and Denzel's house. So that's interesting enough. So then I worked on a bunch of congressional gubernatorial senate campaigns all across the country. I've worked in all 50 states and D.C. On different campaigns. 2012, I was deputy director of the convention in Charlotte. My job was to run the stadium speech, which we did not have. A stadium speech, if you remember, we did it in 2008. In 2012, the weather was bad, and so we moved it into the convention center. So that was 80,000 people difference, and then my job was done. So I got to work on convention. That was a lot of fun. And then in 2016, building up to the start of the coalition, what happened was people started threatening Hillary. And we were, I guess me and some friends just started to get really concerned because no one was really speaking out in like a more official capacity. And so you've got one guy who was a West Virginia delegate, as in a state house representative, and he decided to say that Hillary should be hung on the mall, in the National Mall. And I was like, well, that's just crazy. Like, he should be in jail for that. Like, this is not something that's okay. No one should be okay with this kind of talk. And so I investigated him a little bit because I've done background on candidates and things like that in the past. And I looked into him, and he was a United Airlines pilot. And I was just like, well, this is just like a person who should not be a pilot, who should not be in government at all. And so we were like, well, what can we do about it? So, we filed a complaint against him with the Secret Service, and then we promoted that online. Then this Baldessaro guy and a couple other threats started coming out, and we started doing that again, where we would push back and say, we filed a report with the Secret Service, or we contacted the FBI about it. And we publicly said that. And then that stuff started getting reported by, different news agencies, and it started to get national attention. And, that is the beginning, I guess, of our coalition and our resistance. And then I guess it was maybe September of 2016, I was Googling the wrong thing and found my way onto a Russian business website. And of course, as many would do. And I was already investigating his mob ties and other things about Trump. And I just saw this Russian connection. I was like, why are there so many businesses registered, under his name, even though he had a trademark? It really didn't make any sense to me. It didn't add up. And then, I tweeted something out. I was like, well, what is this about? And then the response from the campaign was no Russian ties. And I was like, well, that's just a lie. Like, I can see here, $40 million for this piece of art that he got commissioned. And then you have millions he made off of Trump vodka there. And then you have 20 million from Miss Universe Moscow there, at least. And I'm just like, well, why are you going to lie about that? Like, why cover that up? Like, you did that publicly and now you're lying about it. Mm-hmm. So we started to dig in. I took all this information, put it into a report. And then 3 days after the election, I presented that to the White House and then to Congress as well. That included people like Carter Page, Mike Flynn, the Agalarovs, the people who did Moscow, Miss Universe Moscow, and that he was going to build Trump Tower Moscow with. And then I took that and I started reporting it on MSNBC. So worked with, Joy and others for the next year. And that kind of, that mixed with the social organizing aspect of it, and then getting people to do stuff in person, like vote, activism basically. And that leads us to here, basically. That's kind of the road. That's a very general way to go about it, but that's how I got here.
So I'm interested in this investigative piece because the Intelligencer just published something last week, I think, that says Donald Trump was never vetted. And so to me, that feels very much like sort of where we are right now, is that, most people, by the time they become president, have held other political office, have done things that have caused people to already be looking into their background. It's sort of shocking that we have a president that there's so much still to discover about, and then there's so much you can still be digging on. So what are the kinds of things that you're sort of focusing investigative lens on right now?
Well, that's the Republican senators, Republicans members of the House, the Republicans that are part of the party, state elected officials as well. We're tracking the money trail for each, seeing if there's LLCs that are masked that are linked to foreign agents. And then we are really focused on Trump and his family and tracking back a bunch of different things, but I can say Middle Eastern ties. And so we'll be doing a report on that. They're more extensive than we thought. And then African ties as well. They've done a lot of work in North Africa and in South Africa and across the continent. So it's been, there's that. There's also Russian-linked connections in different places across the world where he got funding or they bought condos and apartments. So we're focused on following the money, basically. Now we know that Robert Mueller is on top of all of this, but we think that the public has a right to know. We don't want to negatively affect, anything in the investigation. Anything we can track down, though, we usually present to attorneys, and then we decide whether or not it's worth releasing and who to release it to. Sometimes we'll just take our evidence if it's not, something that you would want to send out publicly because it doesn't make a lot of sense, but you're not sure where it goes. Then we send it to our attorney. They send it to the appropriate federal agency or whatnot. But we always want to make sure that we have due diligence so that we don't, throw any sticks in the spokes of their investigation. But he's about 10 years ahead of us. He already knows, everything about him. I think Trump is pretty screwed when it comes to Mueller. He is not playing around. But we're focused on, basically him, his family, everybody he's ever known, and just making sure that, where was he every single day of his life for the past, 40 years, and figuring that out. And any company that's ever been linked to him, any document that's been linked to him, and then most importantly, going through the tens of thousands of documents and files and photos that we've already collected to see, okay, based on reports that we've had over the past 2 years, what makes more sense now? And what can we put together? How can we put together this map of his timeline, what he's done, where the money's come from, and so on. So it really is about following the money. That's what we're really focused on right now.
You had mentioned that you believe the public has a right to know. Can you tell us, based on reactions that you've seen in the past to your investigations and sort of what you know now, what you think, how much you think people, the average voter cares, and what you think the reaction of the average voter is to these types of investigations?
Sure. I mean, most people, it's a lot of information. So simplifying it and making sure that, you have it as clear as possible. That's the key. Making sure that you put it together in a cohesive sort of piece, either in a report or, the Twitter string or whatever it may work. But you got to make sure that you simplify it and connect the dots. Usually there has to be some sort of criminal element to it. It can't just be like he made money there. You have to figure out, like, did he do it illegally? Did he do it with a bank that was under sanctions? Did he? And so it's got to be have that sort of angle to it in order for people to care, at least on a massive level, because people are starting to get tired of the same thing over and over again. Okay, he's got more and more, and that's sad because it's crazy how many different ties and how many financial ties he has to adversarial governments. I mean, this is a guy that still operates casinos across the world, and he's the sitting president. And I just, Panama, China, and other countries. And, he's still selling apartments across the world in Turkey, in South Korea, in places that, people wouldn't really expect the American president to still be operating in business. And I can bet that, this absolutely has decision-making capabilities, as in he decides based on his business. And that is not just against the Constitution, it's against everything that America stands for. So, the American voter, I think, is obviously wants to get to the bottom of it, but they want it to be summed up now, and so that's going to be hard to do without Mueller. But as long as we keep on it and try and, dig in and get more people to talk about it, more people that were involved with them. I interviewed someone like Rob Goldstone, and he was in the Trump Tower meeting. And in that interview, he had said, with just a slight slip up, I guess, he said that Natalia Veselnskaya, the Russian attorney, spoke English. And that was a big deal because she swore an affidavit to Congress where she said, I need a translator, like all this other jazz. And, combined with the fact that, they might have met with Ivanka outside the elevator. So you have these things that start peeling away. The stories become more real, and the honest parts of it start to slip out. So, we have to keep digging in. Like that's one thing for sure. But it really is, it's tough because, these people intentionally lie. And, you can see that with McClatchy reported that at least a cell phone of Michael Cohen's was in Prague. And I told him, I was like, cut the junk, like, were you ever in Czech Republic ever for any reason ever? And his response publicly was no, in all caps, period. And that was like 2 weeks ago, I think. But it's so they're starting to, I think he's lying, by the way, because he told David Corn he was there a few years ago. Then he told Wall Street Journal he was there in 2001. And me personally, I don't forget any country that I've ever been to. And that just is nonsense. So it's just, there's lie after lie. And I think as we uncover more things, it may be annoying to some people, but it's something that we have to do in order to make sure that we call out these people for what they are, which is a lot of them are traitors by the new definition of that term. If you want to, what I like to think of it is we're in a cyber war. And the main opponent in that is Russia. And we're under attack by Russia via cyber methods. And so assisting them in any way is treason. And, I think some people agree with me, some people don't. But I think they redefine treason. I think that the voter is going to care about what comes next, because about 5% of this all has been revealed. Like, most of it has not. And it is worse than you could ever imagine.
We're recording this on Monday morning, and yesterday was the Golden Globes, so there were some choice comments made about some Republicans. Christian Bale talked about Mitch McConnell as being an uncharismatic asshole. So it's very clear that there are a number of people in Hollywood especially who are just being very, very outspoken in a way I don't think we saw as much in previous Republican administrations. You've talked to a number of people. You had an interview recently with Rob Reiner. You've interviewed Alyssa Milano. What do you think is sort of driving this sentiment among artists who are pushing back against Trump and the administration? And do you think that pushes the needle at all with the American public?
Well, I think, some people say, oh, well, you don't have a right to talk about it. I say that they have a responsibility to use their stardom to talk about these issues and to bring them out and to speak out. They have to use that megaphone for good. Alyssa's been doing it for decades. Rob obviously has as well. But like at this level, this explicitly, there's the benefits of it at first are not outweighing the negatives of it with death threats and whatnot. But a lot of these celebrities that come out and speak out against them, there's something that crosses a line that can never be returned. It could be an anti-Semitic comment, it could be something about the environment, but he crosses a line and they're like, okay, I'm done. A lot of times, I'll work with different celebs to see, to make sure that they don't say something that's just, doesn't make any sense. So we'll give them messaging guidance sometimes. And we ran the first Artists Against Trump group, which we opened in mid-2016, I think. And a lot of people just wanted to speak out against them. This level of speaking out, I think some people obviously want to do it because it's a popular sentiment to give. And they want to be, in the mix of that. And they don't want to stand on the sidelines. But I think most of the celebrities that are speaking out, there's some kind of issue that he crossed the line with, and they're just anti him because they know how bad he is for this country and the world. And I think that, they do help because, look at Taylor Swift. I mean, I forget, there were hundreds of thousands of voter registrations that were made within a week of her announcing her support of the Democrat. Pushing the fact to vote has been really essential, and a lot of those votes go Democrat. And so I think it's a necessity for celebrities to get involved with politics. I don't think that there's a lot of, I just want to be popular, because again, the blowback at least used to be so negative in their mind because they never wanted to get criticized, and they just have to adjust and get used to trolls. And that's going to happen when you do this. But people like Alyssa, who stepped up early, those are the kind of people that had the guts to do it before it was cool. But I welcome and I challenge any famous person to use their megaphone to speak out against this, because again, I think it's at a level now where you shouldn't be famous. You shouldn't be a famous actor or actress or musician if you don't use that megaphone for good. I've always been a believer in that. I definitely don't think that anybody should stay on the sidelines, whether you're, play sports professionally, like LeBron James. Who else is going to speak out for different people, and he's got an opportunity and an audience. Use it for good. And he's been doing that. And it's been very helpful. Not only it lessens the death threats against me and people like me, but it also brings more of a lot of people, take their word for it, or they're fans of these people. And so they will look into an issue when they bring it up. So it's been extremely helpful, especially in the media. When we have celebrity mixed into it, we get news coverage. And that helps the cause because, a lot of times it's positive news coverage. It's not criticism. I think celebrities have done a lot. I think they can do more. But I'm happy with where we're at. I think that, it's going to be a different level for 2020. I think you're going to see more people that are, I guess, we call it celebrities, speaking out at a level that we've never seen before, ever in the history of the country.
You mentioned feeling as though the Trump administration was screwed by the Mueller investigation. I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about what that means. What do you see as the end game for your investigations and for the Mueller investigation for the Trump administration? I know we don't know for sure, but speculation is fun.
Sure. I would say with Mueller, I think he's going to do probably multiple reports, not just one. I think those reports will be made public, and I think that they'll make it clear that Trump's committed crimes, whether, it's election fraud, embezzlement, money laundering. I think it's going to outline that. I think it'll outline the course of his history, what he's done, how much money has moved where. And I think the criminal aspect of it will overcome him. I think he'll then make a plea deal for him, his family, and the Trump organization in exchange for his resignation and lesser crimes. He'll still have to face crimes. He'll still be charged with something. I don't think he'll get off, but it might be weak. So, there's the disappointment of he probably is not going to go to jail. He'll probably get a doctor's doctor's note or whatever. And he's older, so he may be able to evade prison, but, he's not going to be able to evade justice. I think that the justice here is him losing money, him losing the position, him losing any semblance of respect, and America waking up. Because if you think about it like this is the best, worst thing that's happened to us in a generation. It's a terrible thing to happen, but it's woke up. People care about redistricting and gerrymandering. People care about voter registration more than ever. This is something that we needed to move the needle in this country and to wake up. Sad as it is, I mean, if you look at the positive of this negativity, I think that we've become a stronger country. I know that I personally have become, stronger, more Teflon-esque against attacks and things like that. But the end game, I think that Mueller is going to do an all-out, drawn, pummeling of him, his friends, whether it's RICO indictment or, arresting people on a massive scale. But, the fact is, most of this is not done. Most of this is not public, and all of it will become public. We may not learn some of the aspects about it. We may never learn some of it, and it may be for the best. We don't want to know, if Russians were here, if Russians attacked Americans. I know different Americans here that have been not just spied on, but their house was broken into. And this is not conspiracy kind of stuff. This is real, legit thing. Obviously, right when I was pushing for a special counsel with our group in 2017, the Russian government, the embassy in the UK, tweeted out something with Louise Mensch and me saying, "Cheers, keep calling Trump Putin's puppet." And it was Leo DiCaprio from Great Gatsby cheersing up. And after that, I became one of the most trolled accounts in the world. And so it was very, in 2017, that is, and it's continued, but it was very targeted, and a normal president would stick up for someone when an official embassy is tweeting out basically a targeting like that. So the end game here is, bottom line, I think with our investigations, I think that we'll be able to bring ethics charges against people, not us personally, but Congress will be able to, based on the evidence we've collected against former members of Congress, Chaffetz, and others that have left Congress. that did illegal acts while they were in Congress. And people say, well, they left Congress, but their staff hasn't. And we need to make sure that those people are flushed out as well. So investigations into them, we will be refiling our updated ethics complaints. I think there's like 15 of them. And so, I think the key for the coalition is to make sure that everyone pays for the crimes that they committed, and making sure that the Democratic Congress does it for our side as well. So if someone is a Democrat, we treat them the same. Because again, this is, I don't care which side you're on. We need to re-level ethics here. And right now, it's just a cesspool instead of a swamp. So we're in a bad spot as a country. But I truly believe that through everyone joining together in the resistance, the support we get throughout the world, and what Mueller and Congress will uncover. I mean, just imagine, like, they have access to everything. They'll know if Nunes was texting with someone at the White House. They'll know if they had emails back and forth. They'll be able to release any and all transcripts. They'll be able to take any evidence and make that public, or make it so that people are aware. And then they'll also have full access to everything now. I think that the craziest thing is Republicans don't know what's going to happen next. But I really do believe that in the next month, the world is going to completely change. It's not even a question. Like, it's just a matter of when. And I think in the next few weeks, you're going to see things shift into a more feeling like this is America again, and that we're back on the right track at least. This is not going to end anytime soon. This is a continuous battle and fight, definitely through 2020. I think Mueller is going to do more than people assume. I think Trump's in deep trouble, and I think the person who's going to expose his fraud and everything he's done throughout his entire life, and the guy that's going to bring him down, is going to be Robert Mueller. And I just don't see how it's possible for it to be any other way based on everyone I talked to, everything that we've done. And on top of that, the coalition will make sure that, again, justice is served to any members of Congress that have done illegal acts, and making sure that they are pushed out, forced to resign, or, face consequences based on it, whether it be fines or jail time.
So how do we all focus now? There's so much going on. There's the Mueller investigation. There's the government shutdown. There's people starting to say they're running for president in 2020. What's sort of your thoughts on how we all focus, what we do, where we should be messaging, what we should be doing moving forward when there's so many balls in the air?
Well, I think the presidential stuff is awesome. So, like, the more people that join the fray, the more voices that we have. Like Biden coming back into the fold now, he's going to be able to speak and it'll be reported on, So I welcome every Democrat to step on that national stage, because we need everybody we can. Staying focused. I think we got to, obviously the key right now is to make sure that Mitch McConnell holds a vote to reopen the government and Trump signs it. Right now, Mitch is, apparently the puppet of Trump. So that makes things confusing. But, there's so many, you're right, there's so many issues going on right now. And there's so many corrupt people, and there's so many acting attorney general, acting chief of staff. It's a consolidation of power, obviously. It's like a dictator. The key is to look at the 30,000 foot level. So right now, our main focus is to reopen the government. And then we have to look at, okay, how do we do that? One of the key ways to do that is for Speaker Pelosi to lead the charge against McConnell. And then McConnell holds a vote, and then the pressure's on Trump. Because there's no way it doesn't pass. There's no way that they don't get the votes. They have the votes in the Senate. So I think that there's going to be, there's a plan on the Democratic side of things where it's going to be made clear the ineptness, the sitting on the hands, and then unwillingness to compromise or do anything on the other side. And I think that they've lost the ability for any kind of credibility or being able to claim, it's just all talk. So staying focused on right now, what I do is I take it day by day and we look at it. Okay, what are the battles we have to fight today? What are our priorities for today? And in the big grand scheme of things, what are the priorities for the week and the month? You don't want to plan too far ahead because the conversation can change, almost immediately. But think about it like this. When we have hearings in the next few weeks on, let's start with the two children that died during and after being in Border Patrol custody. You're going to hear those stories. That's going to be covered throughout the world. You know how bad that makes America look? You know what I mean? Like, I think that the conversation won't be driven by us, as in what topic it will be. It's more of Trump and Speaker Pelosi. But we're ready to talk about every single corrupt subject and make sure we bring everything back up, depending on when the hearings are for what subject. And so it's a day-by-day battle where, you can't plan ahead. You can't do too much of that. And then you have to be flexible. You have to be kind of like rubber bandish, where you are able to adjust based on what he tweets, what he says, because it does control the conversation. But we just embrace that. We embrace that. We say, okay, based on this lunatic and whatever the hell he tweets out today, we'll be able to respond. We're ready for, 150 different subjects. And we're ready to bring out, okay, you want to talk about, the environment? Then we're ready. We have videos. We have old news articles and current news articles. And then we have different tweets that we draft up, obviously, hashtags that we're ready to push out to control the messaging. So, they can define what starts, in regards to how the day is going to go subject-wise, but they're not going to control the narrative. And that's what, PR-wise, we need to make sure that we have more control of the narrative overall. They can control the subject matter. They can say, oh, this is going to be the subject of the day. But they're only going to be able to do that for so long because, again, as Speaker Pelosi takes more control of the helm here and there's more people speaking out and, forward in Congress giving testimony, that's going to be truly helpful, and it'll make it so that we can finally control a lot of that conversation. We can control the subject matter. We can plan ahead. We can not be caught off guard on a daily basis. And so, we just, we're patient. We made it this far, so it's kind of, again, a day-by-day battle, but we're slowly but surely being able to control more of that narrative. Now, that being said, there's obviously emergency situations like right now where the coalition's almost full focus is on two things. One is investigating these people in the Senate mainly, and then and their money on top of everything involved with the shutdown and making sure that we get stories out there about how people are affected by it. But it really is about controlling that narrative as much as we can and making sure that people speak out and they're amplified from that time on. So it's definitely a day-by-day process, but we're prepared, we're organized, we're bigger than ever, we're louder than ever. I think combined, myself, Speaker Pelosi, and Representative Ocasio-Cortez combined for more positive interactions in the past week on Twitter than Trump. And that's beating him on his own field. And once we start chipping away at that, his tweets start to matter less. And so then he doesn't have his fake news outlet. Then he doesn't have his propaganda maker, like that's where people then repeat whatever he says there. And that becomes the narrative nationally because they're like, Trump said so-and-so, blah, 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 because it's so crazy. But he's actually controlling the narrative. Anyways, the long story short is that it's a day-by-day process. We're ready for anything, even aliens attacking, or maybe not that, but we probably welcome them at this point. It's really about taking everything and just making sure that every single day we are as diligent as possible and make sure that we can fight in every way possible to make sure that the truth gets out there and that we override any kind of fake messaging he has and fight back in every single way. But the key right now is we're going to be focused on the shutdown and getting the government reopened. That is our main focus.
All right. Is there anything else that you want to make sure we talk about?
I would just say that I know that the road's been long. I know it's been hard. I know that everybody is sick of it, but we've made it this far, Mm-hmm. Like, we made it this far. We can make it through anything. Like, I know that it's probably going to get worse. It's probably going to, and then especially when he leaves office and we uncover everything that he did. Like, that's when stuff hits the fan and we have to deal with the fact that, that he did things that were illegal while in office. And then we're going to have to face that as a country and rebuild. But luckily, he's so off the charts. It's going to be easier to rebuild because he's so crazy. It's going to be easier to rebuild these relationships internationally and be trusted once him and all his cronies are flushed out. But again, we have to get to that point. So this time right now is going to be some of the toughest that we've ever faced as a country. But, we have to keep our eye on the ball, which is going to be 2020, and, making sure that we fight on a daily basis. I know that I'm committed to being with the coalition through the presidential election, and I know John and the rest of the members are as well. So we're not going anywhere, and we're just getting louder. So, I think that things look great from here. We have nothing but potential in the future. But again, he's still in the White House. He still controls a lot of things. And, he's going to do what he can to stay in office. And we just have to be prepared for anything because he is a lunatic. So, but just keep in mind, we can be positive about it. We can be excited about the fact that we have a Democratic House now. And we can be excited about that we have the potential of taking over the Senate and the White House. And I think that is, in the grand scheme of things, staying as positive as possible in this negative time. That's going to be the goal for everybody. I know I'm going to try and do better online and elsewhere. And, I'm not going to tone it down. But I am going to, be more snarky and less of, I'm not going to say the world is falling. I don't think I ever really do say that, but I do say, he's a fraud, he's a criminal, whatnot. Anyways, the long story short is everybody keep your head up. We've got this. This is a completely different world now. We made it through the hardest part, which is 2 years of just direct control and without anything on the inside, no ears, no eyes, and not being able to expose anything. Now we have some sort of semblance of control. That is huge. So the future is bright. So, I think that people should keep that in mind, how far we've come. And it's only because of us, the American people. That's why we made it this far.
Yeah, totally agree. I remember on November 9th, 2016, how far away it seemed to get through 4 years. And hey, we're halfway there.
Yeah, it's a tough road. But again, I think it's worth it. Me personally, I'm stronger as a person now. And I know a lot of friends that feel the same. And members of Congress are stronger. They speak out louder. And, finally, I think we're going to have at the end of this, I think we're going to have the strongest democracy and strongest country in the world by far. And, one of the key things to keep in mind is one thing Putin never expected, this is in the dossier, is the response from the Americans. He never expected it to be so resilient and so harsh. So, be ready to march, be ready to protest, be ready to resist more. But the future is bright. And, because of people like you and others, this is why we exist as a country. And thankfully, we have folks like you speaking out.
And you.
Thank you.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been really great. I really loved watching all your stuff on Twitter, and people should check out your podcast as well if they haven't, Dworkin Report. So thanks, and we'll all keep fighting.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. I hope I didn't blast too much, everybody.
There's a lot to say right now.
I agree. It could take up an entire day if we wanted it to. But thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast.